Prophet Yusuf's journey is a timeless reflection of how Allah's divine plan unfolds even in the darkest corners of life. His story begins not with comfort or glory, but with betrayal, abandonment, and despair. As a young boy, Yusuf was cast into a deep well by his own brothers, those who were meant to protect and love him. The moment was filled with pain, confusion, and loneliness, but beneath that darkness lay the seed of divine destiny. What appeared to be a tragedy was, in reality, the first chapter of Allah's grand design that would eventually lead Yusuf from the depths of a well to the heights of a throne. In the silence of the well, when there was no one to turn to, Yusuf found his connection with Allah. This moment teaches us that sometimes isolation is not abandonment, it is preparation. Allah removes certain people and comforts from our lives so that our hearts may rely solely on Him. The darkness that Yusuf faced was not meant to destroy him, it was meant to develop him. Every drop of water that echoed in that empty pit was a reminder that Allah was near, watching over His chosen servant and writing a destiny beyond human imagination. As Yusuf was rescued and sold into slavery, his life seemed to spiral further into hardship. From being a beloved son to becoming a servant in a foreign land, every phase tested his faith. Yet, not once did Yusuf lose hope or question Allah's wisdom. This resilience reflects the essence of true faith, trusting Allah even when the path is unclear. We often think that when things fall apart, Allah has forgotten us. But the story of Yusuf teaches otherwise. Sometimes Allah allows us to be placed in difficult situations because those very circumstances are the means through which we are elevated. In the palace of Egypt, Yusuf's integrity and character began to shine. His patience in serving others and his commitment to righteousness caught the attention of those around him. But just as light attracts attention, it also attracts trials. When the test of temptation came through Zuleika, Yusuf once again chose faith over desire. Though this choice led him to prison, it also drew him closer to Allah's mercy. Every setback in Yusuf's life was actually a setup for greater blessings. When the world saw failure, Allah saw progress. When others saw imprisonment, Allah saw refinement. Years later, Yusuf emerged from the prison not as a broken man, but as a symbol of divine wisdom and leadership. The same boy who had been thrown to the well now held the keys to Egypt's treasures. Every injustice he endured had a purpose. The darkness of the well taught him humility. The betrayal of his brothers taught him forgiveness. The seduction of Zuleika taught him restraint, and the prison taught him patience. By the time he reached the throne, Yusuf had not only gained power, but also purity of heart and clarity of purpose. The story of Yusuf reminds every believer that divine destiny often begins in darkness. What we perceive as a fall may actually be the first step toward elevation. Allah never allows pain without purpose, nor despair without direction. Just as Yusuf's tears in the well became the foundation of his glory, our struggles may be shaping unseen blessings ahead. So when life casts you into the pit of uncertainty, remember Yusuf. Remember that every test is a thread in the fabric of divine destiny, and that Allah's light always shines brightest after the darkest night. The life of Prophet Yusuf is a radiant example of how purity and patience lead to honor, no matter how long the road may seem. His journey, filled with betrayal, temptation, and imprisonment, teaches believers that steadfastness in faith and purity of heart are never wasted in the eyes of Allah. From the well of despair to the throne of Egypt, every moment of Yusuf's life reflected trust in divine wisdom and a refusal to compromise moral integrity, even when no one else was watching. When Yusuf was a young boy, he saw a dream in which 11 stars, the sun, and the moon bowed down to him. This was a sign from Allah that he would be chosen for greatness. But the path toward that destiny was not smooth. His own brothers, consumed by jealousy, threw him into a dark well, thinking they had silenced his light forever. Yet Allah's plan was already in motion. The same darkness that was meant to destroy him became the starting point of his rise. Yusuf's patience began there in the silence of the well, trusting that his Lord would not abandon him. Later, when he was sold into slavery in Egypt, Yusuf AS remained faithful to Allah. Even as a servant in the house of the Egyptian minister, he earned respect through his honesty, humility, and good character. His purity of intention turned his lowly position into a source of honor. But soon, another trial awaited him. The wife of his master, Zuleika, was captivated by his beauty and sought to seduce him. It was a moment where many would falter, but Yusuf AS chose faith over desire. His heart whispered, I seek refuge in Allah. He preferred prison to sin, declaring that being wronged was better than disobeying his Lord. This act of purity made him one of the most honorable men mentioned in the Qur'an, a man who triumphed over temptation, not by strength of body, but by strength of faith. Even when false accusations led him to prison, Yusuf AS did not despair. He turned his imprisonment into an opportunity to preach the message of monotheism. Behind the bars, he continued to serve Allah with wisdom and patience, guiding others to righteousness. His calm demeanor, his pure soul, and his unwavering trust in Allah's decree earned him admiration among the prisoners. His ability to interpret dreams became a means through which Allah elevated him again. Years later, the same skill led him to the royal court, where his interpretation of the king's dream saved Egypt from famine. The boy once thrown into a well now stood as the savior of a nation. When Yusuf AS was finally made governor of Egypt, his humility and purity of heart remained unchanged. He did not use power to avenge his past. Instead, he used it to serve humanity and restore peace. The greatest test came when his brothers, the same ones who betrayed him, stood before him seeking food during the famine. Instead of exposing them, he forgave them. His words were full of mercy and dignity. There is no blame upon you today. In that moment, his patience bore fruit, and his purity of heart shone brighter than any crown. The story of Yusuf AS teaches that true honor is not achieved through wealth, position, or revenge, but through purity of heart and patience in hardship. When a believer guards his soul from sin and waits for Allah's plan with faith, every trial becomes a step toward divine reward. Yusuf's life reminds us that even when the world forgets you, Allah never does. And those who remain pure and patient will always rise by the will of the most merciful. The story of Prophet Yusuf AS stands as one of the most moving examples of how trials shape the destiny of those chosen by Allah. His life begins with love, surrounded by his father Yaqub's affection, but soon turns into a journey of betrayal, separation, and endless hardship. Yet, through every test, Yusuf AS never loses faith. He accepts every challenge as a step in Allah's divine plan, showing believers that trials are not meant to break us. They are meant to build us into something greater than we could ever imagine. When Yusuf AS was thrown into the well by his jealous brothers, he was just a young boy with dreams of greatness. To him, the dream of the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowing before him seemed distant and mysterious. But Allah was already guiding him toward that destiny. The darkness of the well was only a beginning, a painful doorway to divine wisdom. What appears to be a fall is sometimes the very path that lifts us higher. For Yusuf AS, the well became the first classroom of faith, where he learned that even in loneliness, Allah never abandons his servant. His journey from the well to slavery in Egypt was another severe test. He was sold as a slave, stripped of his freedom and dignity. Yet, Yusuf AS did not lose his sense of purpose. He worked sincerely in the house of Al-Aziz, earning respect through honesty and purity of character. His strength was not in wealth or position, but in the calmness of his heart that trusted Allah's decree. Then came the temptation of Zuleika, a test of both morality and desire. Yusuf AS chose imprisonment over sin, saying, "My Lord, prison is dearer to me than what they invite me to." This moment defined him, not as a victim of circumstance, but as a man of unshakable principle. Years passed behind the walls of a prison cell, but Yusuf AS remained patient, using his time to teach and inspire others through wisdom and dreams. His patience bore fruit when Allah's plan unfolded once more. Through the interpretation of dreams, Yusuf A.S. was elevated from a prisoner to a leader, from forgotten to remembered, from captive to commander. What seemed like endless suffering was, in truth, a journey of refinement. Every hardship he faced was a tool in Allah's hand, shaping him for the great responsibility that awaited him. When Yusuf A.S. stood before the king of Egypt and became a trusted governor, he had every reason to feel vindicated. Yet his heart remained humble and grateful. He did not seek revenge on his brothers, but forgave them with gentleness and grace, saying, "There is no blame upon you today. May Allah forgive you." Only a heart that has tasted the sweetness of patience can speak with such mercy. His greatness was not merely in power or position, but in the purity of his soul and the strength of his faith. The story of Yusuf A.S. reminds every believer that Allah's plan is perfect even when we do not understand it. Life's trials are not random. They are carefully measured experiences designed to bring out the best within us. Every loss hides a lesson, and every delay carries divine wisdom. Yusuf A.S. teaches us that our darkest moments may be the very gateways to our greatest blessings. When faith remains firm and patience guides our steps, Allah transforms every trial into a throne, every sorrow into strength, and every tear into triumph. Indeed, trials are not signs of Allah's absence. They are signs of his preparation for greatness. The story of Prophet Yusuf A.S. stands as one of the most profound lessons in faith, purity, and self-restraint in the face of temptation. Among the many moments in his life that reveal his unwavering devotion to Allah, the trial of desire remains one of the most powerful. When Yusuf A.S. was young, he was blessed with beauty, wisdom, and purity that set him apart. Sold into slavery and brought to Egypt, he found himself in the house of Al-Aziz, a high-ranking nobleman. There he was treated well and earned great trust for his honesty and sincerity. Yet, it was within the comfort of that very household that one of his greatest tests awaited him. Zuleika, the wife of Al-Aziz, became infatuated with Yusuf's grace and beauty. She desired him deeply and sought to seduce him when no one was around. The Qur'an describes the moment vividly. She locked the doors and said, "Come to me." At that instant, Yusuf A.S. could have easily fallen into sin. He was young, handsome, and alone in a foreign land where no one would hold him accountable. But instead of giving in to his desires, he uttered words that would echo through history. "I seek refuge in Allah. Indeed, He is my Lord. He has given me a good home." His immediate reaction was not hesitation, but instant remembrance of Allah. This single act of resistance revealed the strength of his iman, showing that faith is not merely belief, but the power to act righteously when temptation surrounds us. The struggle of Yusuf A.S. was not external alone. It was deeply internal. Desire is a natural part of human nature, yet controlling it for the sake of Allah is the true mark of a believer. When Zuleika tried to overpower him, he fled, running toward the door in fear of disobeying his Lord. In that moment, it was not just a woman chasing a man, it was a battle between desire and faith, between the lower self, nafs, and divine obedience. Yusuf A.S. chose faith over fleeting pleasure, purity over passion, and divine satisfaction over worldly gratification. Even when he was wrongfully accused and imprisoned for something he did not do, he accepted it with patience, saying that prison was preferable to disobeying Allah. This choice teaches every believer that the price of righteousness may be worldly suffering, but its reward in the sight of Allah is eternal honor. In the solitude of prison, Yusuf A.S. found peace, for he knew that he had succeeded in his greatest test, the test of the heart. His story reminds us that true freedom does not come from following desires, but from mastering them. Faith, when tested by temptation, reveals its purity. It is easy to claim belief in Allah when life is comfortable, but the real proof of faith emerges when the soul is torn between right and wrong. And one chooses Allah without hesitation. Yusuf's victory over desire also symbolizes the victory of light over darkness. While Zuleika was blinded by her passion, Yusuf A.S. was illuminated by divine guidance. Years later, When Allah elevated him to a position of power in Egypt, the same woman who once tried to seduce him admitted her mistake and testified to his purity. This moment completed the divine justice that had been unfolding all along, that those who protect their honor for the sake of Allah are ultimately honored by him in this world and the next. The story of Prophet Yusuf AS teaches that no temptation, however strong, can overpower a heart that is anchored in faith. When faced with the fire of desire, Yusuf AS chose the coolness of Allah's mercy. His story remains a timeless reminder that those who trust in Allah, resist their impulses, and guard their hearts will always rise above the storm of sin, purified, honored, and beloved by their Creator. Forgiveness is one of the most profound virtues displayed in the story of Prophet Yusuf AS. His journey from the darkness of a well to the throne of Egypt is not just about destiny and success. It is a living example of divine character, mercy, and emotional strength. When Yusuf AS finally stood face to face with the very brothers who once plotted his destruction, his heart did not turn to revenge, nor did he use his power to humiliate them. Instead, he spoke words that echo through the ages. No blame will there be upon you today. May Allah forgive you, and he is the most merciful of the merciful. These words were not just a statement of pardon. They were the ultimate expression of prophetic grace and the pure reflection of Allah's mercy on earth. To understand the depth of this forgiveness, we must remember what Yusuf AS endured. As a young boy, he was cast into a dark, empty well by his own brothers, left to die in isolation. They were driven by jealousy, unable to bear their father's love for him. Yusuf AS was later sold into slavery, imprisoned for a crime he did not commit, and forgotten by those he helped. Yet through it all, he never allowed bitterness to take root in his heart. He placed his trust entirely in Allah, believing that every pain carried a hidden wisdom, and every loss led him closer to his divine purpose. When Allah raised him from the depths of suffering to the height of authority, Yusuf AS had every worldly reason to seek retribution. He was now the ruler of Egypt, powerful enough to punish those who wronged him. But true nobility is not in the power to destroy, it lies in the strength to forgive. Yusuf AS chose compassion over anger, mercy over vengeance. He understood that forgiveness does not erase justice, but transcends it, elevating the soul above the cycle of hate. His heart was free from resentment because he had purified it through patience and faith. Forgiveness in Islam is not a sign of weakness. It is the highest form of strength. It means surrendering one's pain to Allah and trusting that he will bring justice in the best way. Prophet Yusuf AS forgave his brothers not because they deserved it, but because he sought Allah's pleasure above all. His forgiveness healed not only his own heart, but also restored unity in his family. It brought reconciliation between father and sons, transforming years of regret into a moment of divine mercy. The story teaches every believer that life's greatest victories come not from defeating others, but from conquering oneself. We all experience betrayal, hurt, and injustice, but the Qur'an shows us that forgiveness is the path to peace. It cleanses the soul and frees the heart from the poison of resentment. When Yusuf AS forgave, Allah elevated him even further, granting him honor, wisdom, and love. His ability to forgive became the crown that completed his rise from the well to the throne and from pain to peace. In the end, Yusuf's AS story is not about what others did to him. It is about how he responded. His forgiveness turned his tragedy into triumph and his suffering into spiritual beauty. The mark of true nobility is not measured by power, wealth, or position, but by the purity of the heart that can forgive even when it has every reason to hate. Through Prophet Yusuf AS, Allah reminds us that forgiveness is not just an act. It is a reflection of divine mercy within the human soul. The story of Prophet Yusuf AS is one of the most beautiful and complete stories in the Qur'an, revealing how divine wisdom works through every trial and triumph. From the moment he was cast into the well by his jealous brothers to the time he ascended to the throne of Egypt, every stage of his life reflected Allah's precise and perfect plan His journey from captivity to command shows that nothing happens without purpose, and every test is a step toward divine elevation. As a young boy, Yusuf A.S. saw a dream of 11 stars, the sun and the moon bowing before him. This vision symbolized his future greatness, but he could not yet understand its meaning. His father, Prophet Yusuf A.S., recognized it as a sign of divine favor and warned him not to reveal it to his brothers, for jealousy is a destructive force. Despite his father's protection, envy took root in the hearts of his brothers, and they plotted to get rid of him. What they saw as a way to erase him from their lives was, in reality, the beginning of his divine destiny. Yusuf A.S. was thrown into a deep well, left to die. Yet Allah's mercy turned this pit of despair into a passage toward greatness. A passing caravan found the young boy and sold him into slavery in Egypt. Stripped of his freedom, away from his home and family, Yusuf A.S. held firm to his faith. Even as a slave in a foreign land, his noble character and honesty made him stand out. The wife of his master, Zuleika, was struck by his beauty and tried to seduce him. In one of the greatest moral tests, Yusuf A.S. chose imprisonment over sin, saying, "O my Lord, prison is more beloved to me than that to which they invite me." His steadfastness in the face of temptation became a symbol of true strength, the kind that values obedience to Allah over fleeting desires. Years passed in prison, yet Yusuf A.S. never lost hope. He continued to serve, interpret dreams, and call others toward the oneness of Allah. When the king of Egypt had a troubling dream that none could explain, Yusuf's gift became his path to freedom. By Allah's will, he interpreted the dream as a warning of years of prosperity, followed by years of famine, and his wisdom saved the entire nation. Recognizing his intelligence and sincerity, the king appointed Yusuf A.S. as the treasurer and governor over Egypt's resources. The once forgotten slave now stood as a leader, respected and trusted, a living proof that Allah elevates whom he wills. When famine struck the lands, Yusuf's brothers came to Egypt seeking food. They did not recognize him, but Yusuf A.S. recognized them. After testing their sincerity and witnessing their repentance, he finally revealed his identity. Instead of punishing them, he forgave them, saying with humility and grace, "No blame upon you today. Allah will forgive you, and he is the most merciful of the merciful." This act of forgiveness completed his journey. The boy who was betrayed by his brothers became the man who saved them, showing that true greatness lies in mercy. From the well to the palace, from slavery to sovereignty, Prophet Yusuf's story is a divine testament that Allah's plan never fails. What appears as misfortune in the moment may be the very path to one's destiny. Every hardship carries hidden wisdom, and every delay is a form of divine timing. If we, like Yusuf A.S.'s, remain patient, pure, and faithful during our darkest times, Allah will lead us from captivity to command, from sorrow to success, and from trials to triumph, for his promise is always true.